Extreme trials, savage raids, ultimate raids, prog, clears, reclears, party finder. Where do you begin? I get asked a lot of questions about how to get into raiding, so let me help you get started. Looking at all of the endgame raids can seem really overwhelming when you're new to the game and seeing it for the first time, so let's break it down into steps. When it comes to Final Fantasy XIV endgame or high-end content, there are 3 levels of difficulty: extreme trials, savage raids, and ultimate raids. All these types of fights are 8-man content standardly consisting of 2 tanks, 2 healers, and 4 DPS, though recently we've had the addition of the 4-man content Criterion Dungeons and Criterion Savage Dungeons, and while they are very good, we're not going to talk about those today. So what are extreme trials? Extreme trials are going to be your first step up in difficulty when it comes to getting started with raiding and endgame content. They're a harder version of normal trials, and they'll introduce you to occasional DPS checks as well as occasional mechanics requiring personal responsibility, which is not something you see in normal content. So then what are savage raids? Savage raids are a harder version of the normal raids and are generally much harder than extreme trials. These fights will have DPS checks, require more healing and mitigation, along with a myriad of mechanics requiring personal responsibility from everyone. It is very common for savage raids to have body check mechanics, meaning that if even one person messes up the mechanic, it will wipe the entire group. And lastly, what are ultimate raids? Each ultimate raid is based on a series of either trials or raids. For example, the Unending Coil of Bahamut Ultimate, shortened to UCOB, is based on the A Realm Reborn Coil of Bahamut raids. The Epic of Alexander Ultimate, T, is based on the Heavensward Alexander raids. Dragon Song's Reprise Ultimate, DSR, my personal favorite, is based on the Heavensward MSQ trials. Ultimate raids, while being based on a set of either raids or trials, are comprised of an amalgamation of completely reimagined versions of mechanics from said trials and raids, along with entirely new mechanics as well. Ultimate raids are usually anywhere from 15 to 20 minute long fights on average on release, being the longest fights in the game. So now that we know the different difficulty levels of high-end content, let's go back to the initial question. Where do I start? How do I actually get into raiding? Anytime someone asks me these kinds of questions, I personally always recommend first getting comfortable with at least one job. What I mean by comfortable is learning how to play the job. Places like the Balance Discord or Balance website, links will be in the description for both of these, are a great place for basic resources such as openers, best in slot gear sets, and FAQs for every job. Being able to play a job entirely correctly isn't as important in extreme trials, as there usually aren't really any difficult DPS checks, but being able to do good and consistent damage is very important in Savage and Ultimate raiding, so it's good to get that rotation practice in early. Not only is doing damage important, but the more comfortable you are on a job, the less you'll have to actually think about your rotation while doing it. The less you have to pay attention to your hotbars and your rotation, the more you can pay attention to the fight and the mechanics that are happening. I find that always progging a fight on a job that I'm completely comfortable with has probably been one of the most important things that I do to help myself learn and understand mechanics quickly. To get comfortable on a job, hit a striking dummy for a bit to get a basic understanding of your chosen job down, and then take it into some current max level normal raids and normal trials to practice your rotation while also having to do some basic mechanics. Once you're ready to start an extreme trial, you have a few options. On any NA, EU, or OCE server, players use Party Finder for any extreme, savage, or ultimate content. Depending on how you want to prog the fight, you want to use certain keywords in your Party Finder description. Fresh means that it will be your first time in the instance and your first time attempting the fight. Blind means that you have not watched a guide beforehand and would like to figure out the mechanics yourself as you go. If you do not want to prog a fight blind but are fresh, you can watch a guide before going into the fight and put something like Fresh, Watch Guide Beforehand in your Party Finder description. For comprehensive guides on extremes and savages that also show helpful POVs, I recommend Junebob's video guides on YouTube. When it comes to reviewing a guide or guides on a fight before progging it, try not to worry about memorizing every single piece of information on the fight from beginning to end. It's good to review the whole guide, but put the majority of your attention on the first few mechanics to make sure you really understand them. That way you can actually make progress in the fight. It doesn't help to know how to do the end of the fight if you can't even get there in the first place because you don't understand the first half of the fight. When you reach a new mechanic in the fight that you wipe to, that becomes your prog point. You can then put up or join party finders that have your prog point listed, or even earlier than your prog point if you're still not confident up to the point you've seen. I've joined prog parties that are before what my prog point technically is many times while I'm still getting earlier mechanics down completely. Once you've gotten comfortable and confident with extreme level difficulty content and feel like you want something more challenging, the next step up is going to be savage raids. Savage raids are released in sets or tiers of 4, generally increasing in difficulty as you work your way to the higher floors. When it comes to savage raiding, gear is a lot more important than it is in extremes. If you're going into a new savage on release, you want to be in either full new crafted gear set or a mix of the crafted gear and normal raid gear. all melded, and use the new bis food and have pots ready for when you're trying to go for the clear. Once again, I'd recommend the balance for information like prog bis and what food to use for your job. If you're not going into a new Savage tier on release, you'll be able to have much better gear from the new tome currency that comes out with Savage when you do decide to go into the tier, so keep capping your weekly tomes and look at the balance resources for what tome pieces to prioritize for your job. Before actually getting started though, we gotta talk about loot and the way it works in Savage raids. When a Savage tier is new, the loot is set to a weekly lock with the reset being on Tuesdays. What this means is that if you clear one of the fights for the first time in that weekly lock time frame with 7 other players who also have not cleared yet for the week, everyone will get 1 page or book, which is a currency that can be traded into the expansion's corresponding raid NPC merchant for gear. The maximum amount of loot that can be rolled on will drop, and everyone is able to roll on it. If anywhere from 1 to 4 players have already cleared the fight within that weekly lock time frame, everyone except the player or players who already cleared for the week will get their page or book, but the amount of loot that drops to be rolled on will be cut in half, and the players who already got their weekly clear will not be able to roll on any of the loot. If 5 or more players have already gotten their weekly clear, anyone who has not gotten their weekly clear will get their page or book, but no loot will drop at all for anyone to roll on. You also need to know that when you clear a fight for the first time that week, that is the only chance you have to get loot from that fight for the week. Even if you end up not actually winning any of the loot you rolled on, you cannot roll on loot for the fight again for that week, even if you clear it again. You will also only get that floor's page or book from your first clear of it of the week. You cannot farm books or loot until the Savage tier is unlocked, which usually takes about 5 or more months from the release of the Savage raids. It's also very important to note that the fights need to be done in order each week. You get a warning in-game if you try to skip a floor for the week, but I'll go over it quickly anyway. If you have not cleared an earlier floor for the week and then you go into a later floor, you will be forfeiting all loot, including your weekly books, for every previous floor you did not do yet that week. So if the current Savage tier was Eden's Verse, and I were to queue into E7S without having done E5S or E6S yet that week, I would be forfeiting all loot for both of those floors for that week. Even if I end up not actually even clearing E7S with that party, just zoning into the instance immediately forfeits my loot for any of the previous floors I did not already do for the week. So you can skip floors if you really want to for the week, though someone else who has done the previous floors of the week will have to be the one to actually queue you in, but just make sure you know how the loot forfeiting works. The wording or phrases to know when it comes to Savage loot and Party Finder are 2 chests, 1 chest, and page/book run or 0 chest. 2 chest is a confusing phrase for new raiders because the same amount of loot still drops from Savage, but the way it visually drops has changed. What I mean by this is with the way it used to be, if all 8 players had not gotten their weekly clear yet, 2 chests would drop. If 1 to 4 players in the party had gotten their weekly clear, 1 chest would drop. If 5 or more players had gotten their weekly clear, no chest would drop. As I said, the same amount of loot still drops now, but 2 chests will always spawn as long as no more than 4 players in the party have cleared for the week. If anywhere from 1 to 4 players in the group have gotten their weekly clear, the amount of loot that drops will be cut in half, but again, there will always be 2 chests that appear now. So all this is to say that the phrase 2 chest in Party Finder really just means full loot no one in the party has cleared for the week. 1 chest means that anywhere from 1 to 4 players in the party have cleared for the week, so the amount of loot that drops will be cut in half. Again, this phrase comes from the way it used to work with either 2 chests or 1 chest appearing. Page run or book run or 0 chest are all pretty self-explanatory. At least 5 or more players in these parties have cleared for the week, no loot will drop, and anyone in the party who has not gotten their weekly clear will still get their weekly book. These parties are for people who don't care about the loot and either only want to get their weekly book or they just want to do the fight for fun. With prog gear, food, pots, and an understanding of how the loot system works, you're ready to jump into Savage. To get started, you can either enlist or join a Party Finder for fresh blind prog, or fresh prog with the requirement of reviewing a guide first. Savage raids are generally much harder than extreme trials, so don't feel discouraged if you find yourself struggling a lot more in Savages. When it comes to moving on to ultimate raids, a rule of thumb I like to go by is to clear at least 1 Savage tier on content before diving into ultimates. You don't have to, but it's always the advice I give when asked. I feel that anyone interested in doing ultimates should be more than capable of clearing 1 Savage tier on content. Another reason I think that's a good rule of thumb to go by is because ultimates take much longer to prog than Savage fights due to the mechanics being more complex and the fights being longer than Savages usually are. If you don't have the patience to prog through and clear 1 Savage tier, you may find that you get too impatient or bored of progging an ultimate. As for actually getting started with ultimates, it's pretty much the same as it is for Savages, except everyone's DPS is even more important. So that means you want to make sure you have the BIS gear set specifically for the ultimate you're doing, Although keep in mind that's much less important for ultimates that are below the current max level, since your item level is synced down for those. Biz food and pots. And then once again, you can either list or join a party finder for fresh blind prog, or fresh prog with the requirement of reviewing a guide first. Lots of people do every kind of endgame content in Party Finder, but if you don't want to, you have the option of either putting together a static or applying to statics that have recruitment posts listed in either Party Finder, in recruitment discords, or on the Reddit recruitment page. As I mentioned earlier, ultimates take a lot longer to prog than savages, so don't be disappointed or discouraged if you feel the prog is slow. And that about wraps it all up. I tried to go into detail where I felt it was needed, but as for the actual rating itself, there isn't a whole lot to say other than just go for it, because that's really the only way to get started and the only way to improve. You can prepare yourself with as much knowledge as you can possibly cram into your head, but sooner or later, you gotta dive in. Be open to tips and constructive criticism from other players, and never be afraid to ask questions while raiding. Taking an extra 30 seconds to ask for clarification on a mechanic is so much better than messing something up over and over because you don't understand it and are too embarrassed to ask. I hope this was able to help some of you guys, and if you think I forgot anything or if you have any additional questions, comment below and ask away. If you think I should make more videos like this on other raid-related topics, 14-related topics, or any kind of topic at all, let me know. I do already have a couple more videos like this planned out, so if you liked this or if it helped you, leave a like and subscribe for more in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and happy raiding!